Grace and peace to you from God our Father and the Lord Jesus Christ. Welcome to this edition of the New Covenant Church Online Bible Study. As we continue our study, not so much at a particular book of the Bible or a topic in the Bible, but by request, we are looking at some of the world religions and looking at some ways that they compare and are different than Christianity, which is a part of my own faith tradition. I'm Pastor Randy Wall at New Covenant Church, and thank you for joining us for this session. We have looked at, in recent weeks, we've looked at my own faith tradition of Christianity. We've looked at Judaism, and last week we looked at Islam. Today we'll be looking at the religious faith of the Buddhism. And as I've said before, while I assume that I could be called an expert on Christianity since I've been a Christian pastor now for over 40 years, I certainly cannot be considered to be an expert on Buddhism or Islam or the other faith traditions that we're looking at besides Christianity. I appreciate you joining me in this session. Buddhism was born in India about 2,500 years ago, about 500 years before the time of Jesus Christ. The word Buddhism comes from the word Buddha, which means to awaken. It has its origins, Buddhism has its origins in Siddhartha Gautama, who's known as the Buddha, who himself was awakened or enlightened when he was in his 30s. He lived until he was in his 80s. Buddha did not consider himself a god, and he never claimed to be a god. He did claim that he was a man who had learned a path to enlightenment. My research reveals that there are approximately 300 million Buddhists in the world today. And in the United States alone, there are thought to be approximately 3.8 million Buddhists, or about 1% of our population. The number of Buddhists seems to be much larger in metropolitan areas of the West Coast and in the northeastern part of the East Coast, while there are smaller numbers in some other parts of our country. I was interested to discover that the average age of Buddhists in the United States is around 30 years old, which is much younger than the number of United Methodists, which is my own faith tradition, are the average age of the United Methodists. Buddhism is growing in the United States and other Western countries, perhaps because it offers answers to the modern materialism that we see in our world today. Interestingly, I was interested to discover, I did a simple Google search for Buddhist temples in the Charlotte, North Carolina area, near where I live, and there are 7 Buddhist temples in the Charlotte area, which surprised me. I didn't realize that there were many. I must admit that my contact with Buddhism is very limited and minimal, not because I've been avoiding Buddhists, but I just haven't come across many in my own comings and goings. Many believe that Buddhism is more than a religion and more accurately a philosophy or a way of life. Buddhists seek to lead a moral life, to be mindful and aware of their thoughts and actions, and to develop wisdom and understanding. Many of you perhaps have seen the statues of a Buddha. A matter of fact, I recall of one that I passed on my way to the airport in Charlotte. Buddhist followers do not worship the Buddhist statues, but they do see the statue as a reminder to them to develop peace and love within themselves. Bowing to the statue of Buddha is not considered by the Buddhist as a form of worship, but it is seen as an expression of gratitude for Buddhist teachings. There are different forms of Buddhism, just as there are differing beliefs in Christianity and Judaism and Islam. While the cultures and customs may differ, the essence of the Buddhist teaching remains the same across different countries and different cultures. Buddhists do not try to preach or to convert, but they do explain if one seeks an explanation and really wants truth. Buddhism is very tolerant of other faith tradition and agrees with many of the moral principles of other faith traditions. Let me talk briefly about some of the major beliefs of Buddhism. First, there are the Four Noble Truths of Buddhism, and I'll seek to explain them in a very brief fashion. These noble truths are as follows. First, noble truth number one, life is suffering. This is a truth that cannot be denied according to the Buddhists. Buddhism seeks to explain how suffering can be avoided and how we can live happy lives. Noble truth number two is that suffering is caused by our own cravings and our own aversions. We will suffer if we expect to always get what we want. We need to not always strive to get what we want, but to modify our own wanting. Noble truth number three is suffering can be overcome and happiness can be attained if we give up our cravings and wants and are satisfied with what we have, and by focusing not on the past or on the future, but on the present. Then finally, noble truth number four is that the Noble Eightfold Path leads to suffering. This path is largely being moral in what we say or do, and if we are that, then that leads to what they call karma. By secondly, focusing on being fully aware in our thoughts and actions, and finally, by developing wisdom by understanding the Four Noble Truths. There are Buddhist teachings that clearly echo some of the teachings of my own faith tradition and the ways and the teachings of Jesus Christ. But unlike Christianity, there is no emphasis on grace or on salvation. Well, I appreciate your attention to this video and to this study. I do have one admonition and an encouragement to you, and that is to seek to write down what you believe. For example, if you are a Christian, as I am, could you explain what you believe to a Buddhist or Islamic follower? Could you tell them what you believe? Part of what I hope that you'll discover in looking at these other world religions is a greater clarity about what you believe. Thank you for joining me for this session of the New Covenant Church Online Bible Study. I'm Randy Wall, signing off for this edition. Next week we will be taking a look at Hinduism. Remember to share your thoughts, your questions, or your comments on our New Covenant Church Online Bible Study Facebook page. Again, thank you for joining us. God bless and keep you.